I've played a lot of games on different consoles. Some that hooked me, and some that made me lose track of time. I thought it'd be fun to finally talk about the ones that really stayed with me. So here are my all-time favorite games and why they're special. Let's jump right in. Lost Odyssey is one of those JRPGs that really stuck with me. When I played it, the thing that hit me the hardest was Kaim's journey, an immortal guy dealing with centuries of memories, and those flashback stories were honestly some of the most emotional moments I've seen in a game. The world, the music, the slower pace, it all felt classic in the best way. And even though the gameplay is old school, the characters and the story made the whole experience unforgettable for me. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is one of the wildest action games I've ever played. The combat hits fast, hard, and stylish, and once you start using blade mode to slice enemies in slow motion, it becomes insanely fun. Raiden moves like an acrobatic monster, chaining combos, countering attacks, and tearing through cyborgs with ridiculous flair. The story goes off the rails in true Metal Gear fashion, but honestly, I barely cared. The non-stop boss fights and over-the-top action kept pulling me back. It's short, explosive, and easily one of the most satisfying hack-and-slash experiences I've had.
Oh, pass along. My sword is only a means to just...
God of War hit me hard not just for the combat, but for the story. Playing as Kratos, watching him stumble through fatherhood with Atreus, felt oddly personal. The Leviathan axe is ridiculously satisfying to throw and recall. Fights are brutal and precise, and the single-camera presentation kept me locked into every emotional moment. The world invited exploration, and I kept finding new reasons to go back. It's powerful, gorgeous, and unforgettable for me.
Again.
This is it, the mental world.
Psychonauts was a game I didn't appreciate when it first came out, but giving it another chance years later completely changed my view of it. The world is so weird, creative, and memorable, jumping into people's minds, uncovering their fears, and seeing these wild levels inspired by things like kaiju movies, Mexican art, and board games was unlike anything else. The humor still hits, the characters are full of personality, and the ideas behind each level feel way ahead of their time. The platforming can be rough, especially the infamous Meat Circus, but the originality and charm make Psychonauts a one-of-a-kind adventure that stuck with me long after I finished it.
Okay.
Bloodborne dragged me into Yharnam's nightmare from the very first minute. Every street felt dangerous, like something was waiting to jump me, and the only way to survive was to stay aggressive. Dodging at the last second, firing the gun to parry, and striking back to regain health made every fight feel intense. The trick weapons were my favorite switching forms mid-battle never got old. And the world! Dark, mysterious, full of secrets I only found by pushing deeper. Every win felt earned, every death hurt, and before I knew it, I was completely lost in its gothic madness. Final Fantasy VIII is a game I've replayed more than once, and every time I'm reminded why it stands out for me. What grabbed me most was the story. It's personal, emotional, and built around a cast that actually feels human. Squall, Rinoa, and the rest of the team grow in believable ways, and their relationships drive everything forward. The shift to realistic character models made the big moments hit even harder, and the CG scenes were incredible for their time. The junction system took a while to understand, but once it clicked, I loved how much freedom it gave me to shape my party. Between the soundtrack, the world, the twists, and the sense of scale, Final Fantasy VIII left a huge impact on me. It's still one of the most memorable entries in the series for me. Dead Space was the start of one of my favorite trilogies ever, and going back to it reminded me exactly why. Playing as Isaac, stepping onto the Ishimura with nothing but a plasma cutter and limited supplies, instantly put me into full survival mode. The atmosphere is still terrifying. Every corner feels unsafe. Every sound makes you tense up, and every necromorph encounter forces you to think fast and aim for the limbs. Even with its age, the story, the sound design, and that iconic suit hold up incredibly well. It's brutal, atmospheric, and genuinely one of the best survival horror experiences I've ever revisited. City of Heroes was one of the first MMOs that really grabbed me. Making my own superhero and jumping into Paragon City felt amazing. The character creator alone kept me busy for hours. Once I hit the streets, the combat was fast, flashy, and full of wild effects that made every fight feel chaotic in the best way. Teaming up was easy too, and most players I met were friendly, which made big battles even more fun. The missions could get repetitive, and some areas looked samey, but flying around the city, leveling up my powers, and taking down villain groups never stopped being exciting. For me, City of Heroes captured that comic book fantasy perfectly.
Your steadfast loyalty with the Vanguard Pack.
Hollow Knight grabbed me much more than I expected. Exploring Hallownest felt like getting lost in a massive underground world full of mystery, atmosphere, and secrets tucked into every corner. The art, music, and tone made each area feel completely unique, and the freedom to wander wherever I wanted kept me hooked for hours. The combat takes patience, but once it clicked, I couldn't put the game down. Every upgrade, every shortcut, every discovery felt earned. It's challenging, it's beautiful, and it's one of the few games where exploring just one more path always turned into staying for another few hours.
Rockstar Games presents.
Max Payne 3 is a dark and intense game that really pulled me into Max's life again. Max is older, tired, and still dealing with a lot of pain, and playing as him feels heavy but powerful. This time, I'm fighting in Sao Paulo, trying to fix things after a kidnapping goes wrong. The gunfights are fast and messy, bullet time, shoot dodge, and explosions everywhere, and they feel great to play. The game switches between cutscenes and action a lot, but the story is strong enough that it works. Max Payne 3 is violent, stylish, and emotional, and it stayed with me long after I finished it.
My blood-stained 401k.
I didn't expect a game from the N64 era to grab me this hard, but Ocarina of Time pulled me in right away. Exploring Hyrule, as Link felt massive and alive, with villages to visit, secrets hidden everywhere, and dungeons full of clever puzzles. The combat surprised me too. That lock-on system made every fight feel smooth and personal, like I was actually squaring up against each enemy. And using the ocarina to solve puzzles and open new paths added a kind of magic I hadn't felt in any other game. Traveling through time, riding Epona across Hyrule Field, discovering hidden caves, and facing those towering bosses created moments I still remember clearly. Even now, the game feels creative, timeless, and way ahead of anything else from that era. Lies of P surprised me with how dark and stylish its world is. Exploring the ruined city of Krat as a puppet warrior felt like stepping into a gothic nightmare, and the combat instantly hooked me. Every dodge, parry, and strike feels sharp and rewarding. I love the weapon system too, mixing different blades and hilts to make some crazy builds. The story pulls you in with its eerie atmosphere and the whole lie or tell the truth mechanic that actually changes things. And the boss fights? Brutal, but unforgettable. It really is the closest thing we've gotten to a true Bloodborne successor.
Won't you help me, son?
I've been playing RuneScape since 2005, and I still come back to it every year. I love how the skills connect mining, cooking, smithing. It all feels satisfying to level. Some updates I liked, some I didn't, but Legacy Mode and Old School RuneScape kept me hooked. Yeah, the game can get grindy, but the progression and quests make it worth it. Even today, the huge world and constant updates keep pulling me back in.
You'll have to share your loot, sure, but friendship is...
Cuphead was one of the most stylish but punishing games I ever played. It's stunning 1930s cartoon style, but the gameplay hits even harder. Every boss fight feels like a crazy, fast-paced showdown, boxing frogs, giant clowns, you name it, all animated by hand and backed by this amazing jazzy soundtrack. It's brutally tough, and I died more times than I can count. But every fail taught me the timing and precision I needed. When you finally beat a boss, the rush is unreal. With its sharp combat, perfect parry system, and unforgettable retro flair, Cuphead is one of the most rewarding challenges.
Stuffing away.
Your life. You're gonna show it to me. I want to see exactly what...
Before Your Eyes is one of the most emotional experiences I've ever played. Controlling everything with just my eyes felt strange at first, but it quickly pulled me into Benjamin's life in a way normal games never could. Every blink jumps you forward in time, so I constantly tried to keep my eyes open just to hold on to each moment a little longer. Watching his childhood, his dreams, and his struggles unfold hit me harder than I expected. It's short, but the impact stays with you. It made me think about life, memories, and what really matters, and that's why it became one of my favorites.
You're not gonna be able to stay, all right?
With your mother gone.
Oblivion was one of those games that completely swallowed my time in the best way possible. The moment I stepped out of the sewers and saw the world of Cyrodiil, I knew I was in for something huge. The freedom was insane, endless quests, dungeons everywhere, and a world that felt alive with its forests, cities, and Daedric portals ripping open in the sky. I loved building my own character, exploring at my own pace, and getting lost in side stories for hours. Even with the occasional bugs, the scale, the atmosphere, and the sense of adventure made it unforgettable. It's still one of the most classic open-world RPG experiences I've ever had. In Nine Souls, the mix of precise parry combat and a beautifully strange sci-fi world really stood out to me. Playing as Yi, every encounter felt like a real test of timing, landing perfect parries and triggering those talisman explosions is incredibly satisfying. The bosses are tough, but in that addictive one more try way. What really surprised me was how emotional the story gets, especially Yi's bond with Shanshuan. Exploring temples, finding shortcuts, and mastering the platforming made the whole journey feel tight and rewarding. It's easily one of the most intense and stylish 2D action games I've played. Stepping back into Shepard's story felt bigger and more personal than ever. What I loved most was how every squad member had depth. Recruiting them, learning their pasts, and earning their loyalty made the whole journey feel alive. The combat was smoother, the missions were more focused, and every choice felt like it carried real weight. By the time I reached the suicide mission, it honestly felt like my team, shaped by all the decisions I'd made. It's still one of the most unforgettable sci-fi adventures I've ever played.
Now I'm in charge!
Red Dead Redemption was the game that made the Wild West feel real to me. Riding as John Marston through those dusty plains, meeting all kinds of unforgettable characters, and getting pulled into his past felt like stepping into a full Western movie. I loved how the world reacted to everything I did, from hunting and duels to helping strangers on the road. Sometimes I'd stop just to watch the sunset or listen to the soundtrack. And when the story reached its final moments, it genuinely hit me hard. It's one of those games that stays with you long after you finish it.
Enjoy life! It's a beautiful struggle!
Final Fantasy IX felt like a warm, nostalgic hug the moment I played it. I loved how it returned to classic fantasy charming towns, quirky characters, and those jaw-dropping pre-rendered scenes. Zidane, Vivi, and the rest quickly felt like family, and I kept pausing just to soak in the world and the music. Yes, battles could slow things down sometimes, but the story, the art, and those heartfelt moments made it all worth it. It's a game I still go back to for comfort and wonder. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is one of the visually stunning and heartfelt RPGs for me. The world of Lumiere feels warm, and the story really hits hard as you lead the 33rd expedition to stop the Paintress, a being who erases people with a single brushstroke. What stood out to me the most was the combat. It mixes turn-based strategy with real-time parries, dodges, and elemental attacks, and every move feels meaningful. The game's art looks hand-painted, and the music adds so much emotion to every moment. It's one of the most unique and artistic RPGs I've played in years, and it left a strong impact on me.
Who are you?
Super Smash Bros. Melee was the game that completely took over my nights with friends. It felt like a huge jump from the N64 version, faster, sharper, and packed with secrets to unlock. I loved how every character played differently, and every match had that chaotic energy where anything could happen. The adventure mode, the trophies, the crazy special modes, I spent hours exploring all of it. But the real magic was in multiplayer. Those late-night battles, the yelling, the clutch recoveries, Melee became one of my all-time favorites because it never stopped being fun. Ghost Recon 2 was the game that made me fall in love with tactical shooters. I really liked how it shifted to a third-person view. It gave me better awareness and made every firefight feel tense. The single-player campaign wasn't the deepest, but moving through jungles and towns with my squad, taking cover, and picking off enemies slowly was incredibly satisfying. But the real hook was the multiplayer. Playing co-op with friends or jumping into online matches felt amazing, smart, intense, and endlessly replayable. Even with its flaws, this is still one of my favorite tactical shooters ever. Playing Baldur's Gate 3 felt like entering a huge fantasy tabletop game where every choice genuinely mattered. I could approach situations in so many ways, climbing around enemies, sneaking through danger, using spells creatively, or sometimes avoiding fights altogether. The turn-based battles were satisfying because I had time to plan and use the environment to my advantage. The character creator hooked me immediately, offering endless options to shape the hero I wanted. What impressed me most were the companions. They react to everything, have their own stories, and make the world feel alive. Everywhere I explored, I found new secrets, new quests, and new outcomes shaped by my decisions. It's one of those games where the adventure truly feels like your own.
Before me. Bow before the absolute. Bow!
When I played Nier, the first thing I thought was, wow, this game is really ugly. But the more I pushed through it, the more I realized how unique and strangely charming it is. The mix of hack-and-slash combat, bullet hell moments, 2D platforming, and weird puzzles kept surprising me. The world felt sad and mysterious, and I slowly got attached to characters like Payne, Weiss, and Yana. Yes, it gets repetitive and you revisit the same areas a lot, but the story hits in a different way and the soundtrack is honestly beautiful. It's flawed, but I'm glad I didn't judge it by its cover. Shadow of the Colossus is one of those games that completely changed how I see video games. The world felt empty, lonely, and beautiful at the same time. Just me, my horse aggro, and my mission to save someone I cared about. Every Colossus felt like its own puzzle, and climbing these giants for the first time was unforgettable. The music, the atmosphere, the quiet moments, it all just hit differently. By the time I reached the ending, I realized I had played something truly special. It's still one of the most powerful gaming experiences I've ever had. BioShock 2 pulled me back into Rapture in a way I didn't expect. Playing as a Big Daddy changed everything. Suddenly I felt protective, heavier, and more connected to the little sisters. The combat was smoother, mixing weapons and plasmids at the same time, and those defense sections with a little sister collecting Adam were tense, but really fun. The story wasn't as mysterious as the first game, but it felt more focused and emotional. And exploring Rapture again, with all the eerie audio logs and ruined beauty, reminded me why this world sticks with me. It's a sequel that truly earned its place. Doom Eternal hit me like a non-stop rush of speed, chaos, and pure skill. Every fight forced me to stay sharp, swapping weapons constantly, timing glory kills, juggling ammo with the chainsaw, and using every tool just to stay alive. It's fast, brutal, and incredibly satisfying once the combat loop clicks. The arenas are huge and packed with secrets, the platforming keeps you moving, and the soundtrack pushes the action even harder. The story isn't the focus, but the campaign is so intense and polished that it hardly matters. Doom Eternal isn't just a good FPS, it's easily one of the most intense games I've played. The Last of Us hit me harder than I expected. It may use familiar apocalypse tropes, but it isn't really about zombies, it's about Joel and Ellie, and watching their relationship slowly grow in this broken world. The writing, acting, and music make every moment feel real, from the small jokes to the brutal scenes that punch you in the gut. The gameplay keeps things tense, with scarce ammo, stealth-heavy encounters, and infected that can end you fast if you slip up. It's emotional, intense, and unforgettable, a story that stayed with me long after the credits rolled. Dark Souls 3 drew me into its world and never let up. It's tough, no doubt, but once I learned its rhythm, every win felt amazing. The combat is sharp and fast, and every boss fight gave me that perfect mix of fear and excitement. Exploring Lothric was just as fun. The dark, mysterious areas and hidden paths always made me curious to push deeper. More than the challenge, it was that feeling of finally overcoming things that once seemed impossible. For me, it's one of the most rewarding games I've played. When I think about Bayonetta, the first thing that hits me is how wild the game feels the moment you press start. I remember just standing there for a second, wondering who this stylish witch even was, and then the game tossed me into fights so fast and so flashy, I couldn't help but smile. Dodging attacks at the last possible second and watching the world drop into slow motion felt incredible, like I actually earned that moment. And the weapons, a gun on every limb, a katana, even ice skates, everything pushed me to experiment. It's one of those games where the crazier it gets, the better it becomes, and I loved every second of that chaos.
Father was murdered, which means I'm right on your doorstep.
When I came back to Battlefront 2 years after launch, it honestly felt like stepping into a brand new game. The blasters finally had an impact, the battles were chaotic in the best way, and the maps, man, they looked straight out of the movies. I remember the moment I spawned as Darth Vader for the first time, walked into a hallway full of enemies, and felt that perfect mix of power and panic as everyone scattered. And when those huge capital supremacy fights start swinging back and forth, it almost feels like you're living your own Star Wars story. It's wild how much this game turned itself around, but I'm glad I was there to see it. Final Fantasy VII Remake was something I was nervous and excited about, but playing it blew away every worry I had. Stepping back into Midgar felt familiar, but also completely new. The characters, the moments, the world. Everything felt richer and more alive. Cloud, Tifa, Barrett, and Aerith had so much personality thanks to great writing and voice acting, and even side characters I barely noticed in the original became memorable. The real surprise for me was the combat. It mixes action and strategy in a way that feels smooth, fast, and incredibly fun. And the boss fights? Easily some of the best I've ever played. For me, this remake didn't just live up to the legacy, it made me fall in love with Final Fantasy VII all over again. Elden Ring was one of those games that completely took over my free time. As a tarnished exploring the lands between, it felt like every path led to something different. A hidden cave, a strange NPC, or a giant boss ready to wipe me out. The combat follows the classic Souls style, but gives you many ways to play. Melee, magic, stealth, horseback battles, and all the unique ashes of war. Some areas destroyed me, but every tough fight felt fair once I learned the patterns. What I enjoyed most was the freedom I could go anywhere, tackle regions in my own order, and find powerful weapons and spells just by being curious. Elden Ring blends challenge and exploration perfectly, and it's easily one of my favorite open-world experiences. Final Fantasy X is one of those games I didn't expect to connect with the way I did. At first, I was unsure about the voices, the new battle system, everything, but once I started, it pulled me in. Traveling with Yuna and the others felt like going on a real pilgrimage, watching each character open up in their own way. The sphere grid, the music, the world of Spira, it all blended into this journey that slowly became personal. By the time I reached the ending, I realized I wasn't just playing another Final Fantasy. I'd lived through one of the most emotional stories I've ever experienced in a game.
That's why we're unbeatable.
Jumping back into Sly Cooper after all those years honestly felt like flipping open a Saturday morning cartoon I used to love. The moment I started sneaking across rooftops with Sly, again cracking jokes with Bentley, listening to Murray hype himself up, it all came rushing back. Every new time period felt like opening a toy box full of surprises, from goofy enemies to Sly's ancestors and their crazy costumes. It's not the hardest game ever, and yeah, the load times made me groan, but the charm was impossible to resist. It just reminded me why I fell in love with these heists in the first place.
Travel back in time, stop those responsible, and fix the damage they've done.
Bad Company 2 is one of those shooters that stuck with me because of how raw and chaotic its battles felt. The campaign was fine, nothing amazing, but once I jumped into multiplayer, that's where everything clicked. Blowing apart buildings, coordinating with a squad, pushing through dust and debris, it felt like real momentum, real teamwork. Every match played out differently because the map literally changed around you. The guns hit hard, the sound design was incredible, and the strategy kept me hooked for years. It's easily one of the most satisfying, team-focused shooters I've ever played. GTA 4 was the first game that made a city feel alive to me. Liberty City wasn't just a map, it felt like a place I actually lived in. The crowded streets, the messed up traffic, the weird strangers who'd pull me into random side stories, it all pulled me in fast. Playing as Nico, trying to rebuild a life while slipping deeper into trouble, gave the missions real weight. Some were frustrating, sure, but most felt unique thanks to the phone, the internet, and all the little details Rockstar packed in. It wasn't perfect, but no open-world game had ever hit that level of realism and atmosphere for me at the time. Playing as Zagreus and fighting my way out of the underworld felt fast, stylish, and super addictive in Hades. Every run gave me new weapons, godly boons, and crazy attack combos that completely changed how I played. And even when I died, which was a lot going back home, never felt like a setback. I got new dialogue, stronger upgrades, and deeper bonds with the characters. The bosses kept changing, the boon combos were wild, and the soundtrack made every fight feel epic. For me, Hades is a roguelite that's not just fun, it's unforgettable.